What is up, you guys? Welcome to Basking in the Trash. I'm your host, Kevin McGann. Coming straight to you from my office/studio. I make music, and I just want to cover something that I've been researching for about a year now. It's called honey trapping, and here are I got 10 signs for you. 10 signs of honey trapping as it pertains to gangstalking. Okay, so now honey trapping can be used for a lot of different reasons. This is only a list as it pertains to my experience and to gangstalking specifically. A little bit about me, I've been a targeted individual, which, fuck that term, right? Empowered individual, because they don't get to label us. You're empowered, right? Because you have a lot of love, you have a lot of worth to bring to the world that they don't like. So they're trying to bring you down, suppress you. Anyways, the first sign of a honey trap relationship as it pertains to gangstalking, through my experience from the past year in the relationship I was just in, that you should look out for is the circumstances through which you met. Okay, so in my case, I met my honey trap at a bar, so pretty normal situation for me. A year ago, I would go out with friends and, we'd grab a drink, whatever. So my guard was down, obviously, and I'd had a few drinks, so it's like it's a perfect situation, right, for these handlers to plant someone in your life. So what was fishy with me is I went to this bar and I locked eyes with this girl across the bar who was just standing there by herself, staring at me, right? Just like, and I don't get that very often. I mean, I don't think I'm bad looking, but it was onerous. It was very obvious, wanted me to notice type look. So obviously I obliged. There's this beautiful girl, just my type. I walk over, start a conversation. So the people in the control room, or whatever you want to call it, the handlers above the handlers, so to speak, were in a room with computers and they're watching where all these handlers and perps are. They had me profiled so well that they knew that strong eye contact from a beautiful woman, especially my type, is definitely going to be enough in a bar setting to get me to approach and start a conversation. Other things that were odd about the way we met was the people that I was with at the time. So one of them is a definite Freemason. He's enlisted in the Army. And for the purposes of this video, I'm definitely going to keep all these people anonymous. I don't wish ill upon any of these people, any of my perps, just because I have too much love and compassion. I don't wish harm upon these people. I wouldn't want them to be hurt as a result of this video or something. So for the purposes of this, my honey trap, we're going to call her Delilah, to quote the Bible. Samson, if you remember this biblical story, he was the first guy to get honey trapped because he was so strong, right? He was massive, and this Delilah comes along. She wants to know where his strength comes from, right? So we'll call her Delilah, but I'm not even going to give a name to my Freemason friend. Not a friend. So it was his idea to go to this bar. So it was his job to have us meet. So that is something to look out for. The circumstances through which you met. That's the first one. The second sign of a honey trap relationship as it pertains to gang stalking is your ideal type. Okay, so this honey trap of mine, she was to a T, what I'm looking for, personality and looks wise. So they had me profiled so well that my honey trap Delilah, she has eczema, and my handlers know that I love dogs. I love, like, I don't own a dog, but I love scratching and petting dogs. They're just the best. So they knew that her having eczema would be a plus when it comes to that, because a lot of our relationship turned into me scratching her, scratching her like a dog, scratching her eczema spots, which made me grow more fond. Obviously, the more you love, the more attachment you have to the object of your affection. So that's the second one, along with that ideal type. So she was both physically and personality-wise. We had a lot in common, and a lot of perceived things in common, which I'll get to later. Another thing was hand signaling. So this is common. Pretty much through my research, I've seen that hand signaling is pretty much across the board. Anyone who's a TI notices hand signaling, this, if I'm over here, this, like touching your face and using your face as a map relative to the TI. So this is what perps will do. If I'm sitting to their left, they're going to be doing this, or if we're in traffic or something. So I noticed that the first couple weeks that we, started hanging out, we'd be in traffic and she would start doing this, or to my other fake friends who are part of the program, who I no longer really consider friends, they'd be all she'd be doing the same hand signaling as them. So right off the bat, hand signaling, definitely, you start noticing that as a TI. You're so attuned to it and so used to it that you can't help but notice it. So right off the bat, that was like huge red flag. So the third one is where it gets kind of interesting. This may not be one that has been talked about. It's not one that I've seen on many videos by TIs or on Reddit or any of those things, is predictive programming. That's the third one, predictive programming. Now, what do I mean by that? Predictive programming meaning that the honey trap, Delilah, she was told to get me to watch certain media, certain TV shows and movies that directly related to what she was doing. She was stalking, honey trapping me. And you'll find this technique in the news a lot, or in popular media, popular movies. It kind of primes the public for what's to come. You'll see this in a lot of like Avengers movies, Marvel movies. They'll have things that are going to be the way of the future, and they're showing it to you now, so that when it happens, you're like, oh, it's like that movie. You're more psychologically ready for it. So in my case with Delilah, she had us watch this show called Imposters. It's on Netflix. You can look it up. It's about this honey trap named Maddie Johnson, who would get these guys to fall in love with her, get them to marry her, and then she would take them for everything they're worth, like take all their money, and they'd never see her again. So we watched that. So that was kind of to like prime my mind, get me ready for that when, if that were to happen, if I didn't break things off and we would have gotten married, maybe that was in the works. You never know how these honey traps are being told to manipulate and hurt you. So as soon as you start suspecting something, you need to trust your intuition to get out of it if you find yourself in it. So predictive programming, Imposters was one of the shows that she had us watch. Y-O-U is another Netflix show about stalking that she really loved and had us watch. And I'm guessing she was not only told to have me watch it, but she watched it before we started dating, almost as like a boot camp, as like a workshop of like, here's what you're going to do type thing. So along with that, subtle conversational hints. And this is another one that, a lot of perps will do in public. They'll talk about things in your search history, things in intimate to your life experience. So obviously these honey traps, they're not going to be perfect. They're going to make mistakes. They're not getting these people straight out of Hollywood or anything. So she definitely had slip-ups where she would, kind of say things a little bit too close to me when she didn't know me that well. For example, I asked her favorite movie when we first started going out. This was maybe a week or two after we had met at the bar. And she said, probably The Matrix, which I love The Matrix, and any TI, if you have not seen The Matrix, it is just like very spot on. But as we continued to date, that was always in my mind. I was like, wow, favorite movie, The Matrix. That seems very out of character for her, especially considering the other movies that we've watched together and she's liked. It's not sci-fi, action thriller was not on her palette of movies. So right off the bat, that was her trying to make it seem like we have a lot in common, to get me further and further into the honey trap. But yeah, so I would just look out for that. Trust your gut on stuff like that. If the person that you start seeing that you're suspecting of being a honey trap starts saying things that are a little bit too on the nose for you, a little bit that they couldn't really know about, definitely trust that instinct. So let's see here. That was subtle conversational hints. That's 5. 6. Or no, that was 4. God, I can't even count. Numerology is for the Masons, not for the TIs. Clearly. 5. Okay, 5. Avoiding the discussion about it. So this one was a big red flag. When I brought it to her attention, I remember we were at a dinner, and I brought it up. I was like, why are you dating me? Like trying to subtly give her an out. I was just like, what are we doing here? And her response was just to cry. It was almost out of like nowhere. Came out of like left field, almost as if she was like under hypnosis. Whenever I would bring up something too real about that, she would just have this sudden reaction to just cry, and obviously that was on purpose, right? Because that drops the discussion. If you're a man fighting with a woman and she starts crying, it's the woman you love, she wins, right? Because you don't want her to be crying. Doesn't matter if you're logically right about something at that point. So the big one, number 5, avoiding the discussion about gangstalking if brought up. This was also apparent on the night that I broke it off. So we were with some of her friends who were definitely part of the program, or aware of it at the very least, doing the same thing that perps do, calling out things very intimate to my experience. So I actually called them out on that. I was like, hey, you guys should go. I made the joke of, hey, you guys should go get your aprons. That was the joke. That's all I said. You guys should go get your aprons. Aprons are worn in Freemason lodges, if you didn't know. So when I made that joke, what did Delilah do? She just started crying. She just cried out of nowhere. I mean, you may think watching this video that I'm not providing enough context, but if you're a TI and you've gone through honey trapping, maybe you'll understand that there really was no context. I mean, her friends were saying things indicative that they were in the know about things that they couldn't know about my life. For example, like a funny story, I was kind of named after Macaulay Culkin's character in Home Alone, Kevin McAllister, and out of nowhere, her friend called me that. It's like, Kevin McAllister, Home Alone. I didn't tell Delilah that. I don't know how he would have known that. So my response was just, hey, you guys should go get your aprons, because it was kind of obvious to me at that point that something fishy was going on. Either they were Freemasons or they were aware of the program, aware of the targeting. So yeah, she just got up, cried, left without me. So avoiding the discussion about it, that's a big one. If you're dating someone, you're suspecting being a honey trap, you definitely know you're a targeted individual. First of all, you should be more suspicious of pretty much anyone that you let into your life. Most of which the person that you're dating. So avoiding the discussion, that's a big one. All right, for number 7, we'll go with occult interests. So Delilah was very much into cultic hobbies and stuff of that nature. She loved witchcraft, and she even made the joke that like her and her neighbor try to be wizards and witches growing up, and she would bring up witches and kind of like black magic type stuff. And a lot of the shows and stuff that she would watch pertained to occultic interests like that, like Supernatural and stuff, and other shows. You know, she just loved like witchcraft kind of thing, which what she was doing was very much part of witchcraft and black magic and things of that nature. Along this point, I'll also point out that we, one of our dates, we were hanging out kind of close to a Masonic lodge, and we were just kind of walking by it, and at the time, they actually had like kind of an open house in their lodge, and they had like all these arts and crafts type things, and Delilah had me go into this Freemason lodge. It almost seemed like she was trying to like recruit me or something. Like as a TI, if Freemasonry is like a big part of your targeting, you would never become a Freemason because that's like that's like selling your soul, right? You're not gonna give in to the handlers if you got any balls. So yeah, she kind of like led me in there, like, oh, dip your toes in the water. What do you think? This is what I'm into, because she most likely is part of Order of the Eastern Star or one of those Jewish cult Masonic sects. So definitely look out for cultic tendencies. When we first started hanging out, she even would talk about like how she was really into cults. She just straight up told me that, like, I'm really into cults. Come to find out, she's probably in a cult that put her up to dating me. So that's number 8, cultic interests. That's a big one. If you start noticing that, yeah, it's probably a red flag if you're a TI and you know you're a TI. This next one, I don't have a lot of proof for this, but this is my personal experience. I was, or am, allergic to her, like physically allergic. So they picked someone based on her DNA, and because they have my DNA for sure. And I don't know if I have like an allergic reaction to people with eczema, or if it was just something in her DNA that didn't vibe with me. But when we'd be really close and we'd be like cuddling in bed or whatever, I would get the sniffles. My nose would just clog up. I would be stuffed. And it would kind of like come out of nowhere. I would notice it when we'd be close. I was congested, could not breathe. And then if I went to the bathroom or something, it was almost like that. Like, nose is unclear, like it's fine. So if your body is trying to tell you not to be with someone for whatever reason, it's probably a good sign that you shouldn't. So that's number 8. I don't know if that relates to anyone else's experience. That might just be mine, and that might just be coincidence, although as a TI you're less apt to buy into coincidences anymore because they're constant, they're continuous, to the point where it's like, oh, this is planned. This, once you start getting mobbed in traffic and at the grocery store for years, you're just like, okay, it's not a coincidence that they were talking about this thing I was just talking about right in my earshot, sort of thing. So again, trust your intuition, trust your gut. It's probably really strong if you're a TI, so trust it. Number 9. So we're getting close here. And this one, again, pertains to a lot of what perps will do is mimicry. So she, like the example I brought up before of like saying she really liked The Matrix, something I really like, to get me to like her and love her more and more, she would copy me because I don't know if maybe you've noticed is if, people like others that are similar to them. So if you imitate them through the way they talk or the way they act, they're more likely to like you, be attached to you. So that one kind of speaks for itself. There's countless videos of TIs talking about mimicry being used. It's kind of like a copying as a way to say, like, well, you're doing the same thing as you should know you're being watched type thing. And the final one, number 10. So after I broke it off, I made it clear, like, hey, I don't want to see you again type thing. So the stalking will actually continue after the relationship. So while you're in, and this is something that happened recently, while you're in that sort of 2 to 3 month phase after a relationship, it's you still think about it a lot. You still think about it and think, oh, well, what could I have done differently? For me, it's a different experience. If you're honey trapped, then it's easier to let it go because you're like, oh, well, this was never legit anyways, so why should I keep harping on it? But that's what they'll do. They'll keep that person stalking you. So they'll have them run into you in public, sort of as a way to keep reminding you of the relationship and of that person. So with Delilah, like pretty recently, I saw her by happenstance, or so I wish was true. I saw her in public, just at the beach on 2 occasions in the past 2 months, which is that's not normal. That's not coincidence because I live in a relatively big city and we don't have any like common places that we'd go anymore for me to like run into that person. So seeing that person twice in a couple months since this happened, that's very, very odd. So the stalking will continue after the relationship while it's still fresh in your mind, just so that it takes longer for you to move on. So I hope these were helpful for someone out there, for any TIs, empowered individuals who are like me and they want to meet someone. They want to maybe settle down with someone and start dating. And maybe if you're a young TI, hopefully this finds you well and you have this more on your radar.